Israel has entered a new phase, fully entered a new phase on their war against Hamas. Hi, I'm Brian Lilley, political columnist with the Toronto Sun. Over the weekend, we saw at first small incursions, then a full ground force operation launched by the Israeli Defense Forces against Hamas. How is it going? Where does it go from here? What about the hostages? These are some of the questions that people have. Avi Melamed is a former Israeli intelligence officer. He is an analyst. Just yesterday, he was in the area around Gaza, surveying what was happening on the ground, and he joins us now. Avi, thanks for the time today.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
Let me ask you, the last weekend, I guess, from the weekend until now, it has been a change, a major change in Israel's offensive against Hamas. There were a couple of early incursions. Is it safe to say it's a full-on ground operation now, or is it still building towards that?
Well, Brian, I think that right now we can say that. The reason I'm saying that is because this morning, a couple of hours ago, the Israeli commander of the Southern Command of the IDF published a formal statement addressing all the units of the IDF in the area of Gaza Strip, and actually basically saying to them, go to war, go to victory, apply and address your assignment and missions, and may God be with you. And so, yeah, I think that we are here at this place right now.
Talk to me about how you would engage in a full-scale war against Hamas. Gaza is densely populated. The ability of civilians to leave has been hampered by border closure, by Hamas itself. And you've got, I was watching this interview that a Hamas official gave on RT, where they were discussing that, yes, we have 500 kilometers of tunnels underneath, but those are for the fighters. It's up to the United Nations to protect the civilians. So you've got a civilian population between you and the people you're trying to fight against. They're in tunnels. What does an operation like this look like?
Well, Brian, I think that the Israeli war plan took, of course, into consideration this major challenge. It's not the only one, but this is, of course, a major challenge, as you accurately say. The combination of Hamas that, on the one hand, using the tunnels for its own good, while using at the same time the Gaza people as its human shield, obviously is just, boosting the nature of this challenge. I think that when I'm looking at the Israeli military operation on the ground, and to the best of my understanding, we are looking at a very structured, a very well-planned, very structured process of progress on the ground that is based upon a combination of massive firepower, which is very precise one, because it includes air force, it includes artillery, it includes tanks, it includes infantry. But the interesting thing is that though they are operating in an area that is populated, and though most of the people actually fleeing from those areas to a safer area in the south part of Gaza, there are still civilians that are in this area. So the ability of the Israeli Defense Forces to, on the one hand, to apply enormously massive firepower, but at the same time to make sure that this firepower will be precise and actually targeting the legitimate targets, meaning Hamas and Islamic Jihad militants and their posts and so on, that ability is actually something that has been designed, planned, and exercised for a long period of time. And it's now being applied on the ground through a very sophisticated governing and monitoring system that are basically in motion. While on the ground, the forces that are moving has the ability within seconds to basically be able to know this is the target, it's legitimate target or illegitimate target. If it's legitimate target, you have the right to go for the kill, and everything is being the whole circuit, so to speaking, could be closed in a couple of seconds. So basically, by doing that, it's minimizing. It's not totally obviously preventing, but it's minimizing substantially a collateral damage.
Well, and I also wonder about the loss of life for the IDF, because when there's a major operation like this and you're trying to take over a city, and any military operation, there comes a point where you have to go house by house, door by door, making sure areas are cleared. Here you've got that extra worry about the tunnels, which the Gaza fighters know the tunnels well. They built them. They know where the hiding spots are. The IDF will not know that. Doesn't that present an extra layer of danger when it comes to finally going in and doing the clearing when they get to that part?
Yes, of course. I mean, the challenge is a multi-layer, sort of speaking, literally speaking. It's above the ground and under the ground. It's an enormously significant challenge from a military perspective. And we know this is not walking in the park. We will have to pay prices. We know that. Nobody has illusions about it. Unfortunately, we'll have to pay price in the life of soldiers and so on. This is a brutal war. This is a war that was imposed on Israel. We now know exactly what the feature of this enemy is like. And as you said, like in the beginning, this is an enemy that actually think that he doesn't care about his own people as long as he's fortified and safe in his own tunnels. So that adds, of course, enormously to the challenge of fighting in this massively complex environment.
That was an unbelievable statement. I mean, I've heard critics of Hamas describe them that way, that they don't care for their civilian population, that they use them as human shields. The author Daniel Pipe said they're like used as cannon fodder by Hamas just to get in the way of the artillery. But I hadn't heard a Hamas official actually say, no, we're not there to protect the civilian population. That's up to the United Nations. That was a real shock to me and shows a complete difference of mindset between almost every other army in the world, which is there to protect the civilian population, and Hamas.
Yes, that is very accurate. But here is something that I would say even not less shocking. You know that for many years, the Arab world is saying the same thing to Hamas. It's not something new. The Arab world has been saying constantly to Hamas and Islamic Jihad, and particularly after 2007, when Hamas took over Gaza Strip and dragged Gaza Strip to the havoc, the Arab world constantly says to Hamas, you are responsible for what happened in Gaza. You dragged Gaza Strip to despair, to havoc, to destruction. So the interesting thing is that, as you said right now, you were shocked by this statement and by the finding of this mind-blowing fact that Hamas basically couldn't care less about his people, the citizens. But the interesting thing is that everybody in the Arab world has been saying that for many years. And that fact was not reflected in the discussion in the West.
Avi, the issue of hostages continues to weigh heavily on the minds of people here in Canada. Our politicians in Parliament were meeting with families, both the Prime Minister, opposition leaders were meeting with families of people who have been taken hostage in Ottawa yesterday. There is a truck that is going around the streets of Toronto with the slogan, bring them home. And it's a digital billboard on the back of a truck showing the faces of the hostages. There have been a few who have been released. There was a high-profile rescue by the IDF, but you have a theory on that. This woman, this soldier who was rescued, you speculate that she was not held by Hamas proper. Tell us about her. How was she rescued, and why you've got this theory?
Well, from quite early phase of this whole issue, when I was referring to the issue of the hostages, one of the things that I said in a very early phase was that, to the best of my understanding, what happened in that day, in October 7th, was that we got 1,500 Hamas terrorists storming to Israel. And they are butchering Israeli citizens, and they are kidnapping Israeli citizens from the communities next to Gaza Strip. One of the interesting things, when I was watching the whole reports coming from the area, I saw also civilians, people from Gaza entering to Israel, and they were also kidnapping Israelis. So one of the things that I was thinking to myself was, it's so chaotic, it is so scattered, that one of the things I was thinking was, I wonder to what extent Hamas has control over the whole hostages. To what extent he knows exactly where and each and every one of these people is right now located in. And this is something that I expressed in a quite early phase of this whole war. By the way, today, the Israeli IDF openly and formally said, we don't think that Hamas knows exactly where each and every one of those hostages are, meaning that it was validating my early observation. I don't know the ins and outs of the story of the release of the girl, of the soldier, but here is something that I also said, and I think it's valid. I also said it in the beginning of the whole war. The more Israel is on the ground in Gaza Strip, it has a better ability to extract more and more information and intelligence about the whereabouts of the hostages. Because we have to remember there is a lot of, I would say, handles of pressure that Israel can use in order to basically cause, if there are individuals or even if there are terrorists of Hamas that are holding separately in different places, hostage or more than one hostage, there are ways, if you can reach those people, there are ways basically to make them be willing to let the hostages go. You can think about different kinds of ways how can it be achieved. And by the way, I think that this is something that bothers Hamas. One of the most significant thing to remember is that the hostages that was free, this girl, she was a soldier. She was kidnapped as a soldier, okay? Why is it significant? Because Hamas, one of Hamas' major marketing card is that Hamas commit to the Palestinian that he is going to free all the Palestinian prisoners that are locked in Israel. And to that end, Hamas' major card is to kidnap Israeli soldiers, okay? So for Hamas losing a soldier as hostage, for Hamas losing a hostage that is a soldier, that's kind of like, it's a little bit painful for Hamas. But the end of the day, what I want to say is that as wonderful it is to see this girl going back to her family safe and sound and everything is fine and it's wonderful, we have to think about the rest 239 or 40 hostages and their families. This is one thing. And one thing that also I think that we have to remember, I don't think that we see something like that so frequently. I wish, but I don't think this is something that we see frequently. And so we have to be aware of that. So it's a specific episode. It's a very unique one. I would just be careful in like trying to come up with some more like expectations that will be unrealistic in that context.
So you're saying it would be unrealistic for the families of all the hostages to believe that every loved one's going to come home?
No, that's not what I say.
No?
I want to say that, and I hope that it will be the case. What I want to say is that I don't think that we'll see yet another situation where there is some sort of like a special operation that then you bring back one hostage or five. I don't see that happening right now. I don't want to say if it could happen or not. Nobody knows. I just think that it's important to have a realistic expectations, not to, again, it's difficult to say that, but I think it's the right thing to say. We want to see the hostages, all of them back home. We want to see them well and fine with their families. Hopefully it wouldn't take long. I don't know to say. I just want to say that right now with this euphoric moment where there was a special operation that enabled to release one of the hostages, we have to remember that it's not something that is likely going to duplicate every moment or every day. And I think that we have to bear it in mind.
We're at about week 3, just over week 3 of this war that Hamas launched against Israel. Given what you've seen, I know you were out surveying areas near the front yesterday. Is there a sense of how long this sort of operation could take, should take? Does it move very quickly at the beginning and then slow down so that we're talking months? What's your sense?
Look, I don't know to say. I don't have the blueprints. Nobody has. But I think that we could say definitely it's not something short. This is something that is long term. This is a multi-phase process. It's not going to run its course over a day or week or weeks. It's a long process. And one other thing that we have to remember in that context, the military aspect of this war is actually one phase, because then there are other steps and phases that should be following that. So in the end of the day, when we look at this whole story, I would say we are looking at something that is a long term. I wouldn't be hesitating to say in terms of months, because we have to look at that reality. but it then has its inner phases that I think are basically kind of like taken into consideration as part of the Israeli both military and political or diplomatic war plan.
All right, Avi, thanks so much for your time, and hopefully we'll check in with you again soon and get updates as things progress.
Of course, Brian. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Well, of course, we always want to hear from the audience, so let us know what you think. You can email us, you can drop a comment down below. Please do share this on social media where you're able to. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to our channel.